My name is Rafael de Gregorio, and this is a little story about the place I grew up.
I'd be lost without my fishing. It's an addiction, you know, that you just got to keep getting more of. Ready, come.
A 100 years ago, the first fishing migrants from Italy, Scotland and the Shetland Isles travelled here to Wellington's rugged south coast to begin a new life. Strong tides and erratic weather have always been dependable adversaries. But now, a new threat has arisen that is changing the traditional way for the fisher families of the bay.
Every morning I get up at 3 o'clock, see the weather, what it look like. It says fine, we go fishing, it says bad weather. I ring the crew, it says stay in bed. Depends on the tide too, like sometimes you go a little bit late. I prefer go early, do the job, finished, they're coming home. I started when I was about 8 years old with my dad. My daddy was fisherman. We followed the routine, you know. Fishing, that's it, nothing else. I enjoy it. You breathe here, and nobody breathed before you in the morning. Nice and fresh.
Rough sea easing, northerly swell 1 metre, southerly swell 1 metre at times. Last August was 51 years fishing. I started when I was 40. Yeah, so it's been a tough life, but I wouldn't change it. You're out and you're doing what you want to do. 3 generations of fishing at the moment. 5 grandsons. But this one's a keen one. Yeah, Calby, come and feel a fish. Come on, quick.
Steady does it.
And that's a blue nose, all right?
I can feel it heading.
Be good to see another generation. I think you best go to university and get a bit behind you and then come into the industry if you want.
My son must be 22, 23 years fishing.
But I've been actually going out on boats since I was 5, so yeah, so that's about 35 years.
We make sure we look after the place, and then it looks after itself as well with the way the weather and tides act. We can only pick our gear up when the tides ease up and the floats come to the surface. This here is a good fishery. We've been fishing the same places here for about 80, 90 years. That's my family anyway. And it still produces the goods for me, you know, so it says something, doesn't it? Oh, there you go. Look at that. Somebody's got to do it. Not many people can say that after 25 years they still get a buzz out getting out of bed and going to work each day.
It's not a job, it's a way of life, and it's something I hope to be doing in 30 years' time, or 40 years' time.
Hopefully the government hasn't put me out of a job. You never know what legislation's around the corner.
Fishing's been in my family all, generations before my father.
Is that the great-grandfather, that one?
Yeah, that's my grandfather.
Where did he fish?
He fished down in Marseilles.
Marseille, yeah.
For anchovies, sardines and different kinds of fish there, and tuna. So, they've been in the family for a while, and my father came to New Zealand in 1922. No, he fished right until he was 1968.
He basically got the ball rolling here, travelled halfway around the world to a place he'd never seen for a better life for his family. And yeah, you've got to take your hat off to somebody like that.
My wife came on holiday in Italy. I meet it there. We had enough after I come back in New Zealand. It was 73, I come back in New Zealand. And this Italian fisherman come along, said, "You like come fishing?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" Yeah. I make a little bit of money. I started luck a little bit. I said, "Oh, shit, that's not bad life too." I suppose stay here just 2 years. 35 years after, still in New Zealand.
Emmanuel Makarios has written extensively about Island Bay's rich fishing history.
Whenever you mention Island Bay fishing, everyone thinks of the Italian community and they overlook the Shetland Island community. But the Shetland Islanders were not as such a big community as the Italian one, but they were a very important part of that community. The Shetland Islanders were used to working conditions like Wellington experiences and far worse. And it meant that they introduced a technology and a style of fishing that the Italians weren't used to.
You work literally 21 days in a month, a flat car. You work 1 day, maybe come another 10 days, a little bit windy. It can be to Wellington in a nice day. That's where it is. Too hot is no good. Nice and warm, yeah, but not too hot. Today it's just beautiful. Now we wait till the tide is slack a little bit, then we start pulling again. That's what it is today. It's not just job. I like being water. Just I like being myself. I tell the crew what they need to do. That's it. I like the cold. And more it's cold, it's better. Like everybody, oh, it's too cold. No, that's what I want. I go fishing, you feel the breeze in the face, the water, so water. That's very nice. That's my enjoyment. My son enjoyed this, the football. My enjoyment is fishing.
You can't put a line over anywhere in the sea, there, at Cook Strait. You've got to have your spots for the fish. No two ways about it.
He drew his knowledge from his father, and I draw it from him. Not many guys have got a bank of knowledge like him. I'll pass it on, but it won't be to... my girls are more into their equestrian sports. So it might be my nephew who showed a bit of promise. The way we're set up, I hope that the Mulo family's still fishing in generations to come. You know, the sad thing is that might not be the case.
Tide changes a bit better, it might be better for that one.
Cook, gale warning in force. Sea becoming very rough for a time. Southerly swell rising 2 meters for a time.
If I get a few days of bad weather, you can't wait till I go fishing again. I get pretty frustrated, and my wife will tell you that, because it's just that urge, you know, you've got to go out and catch your fish, and it's just like you feel like you're lost.
My feet start to go a little bit itchy. I go round up and down. I start eating, it just upset me a little bit. Someday you find out, say, oh, 20 knots, I'll stay in bed.
But I remember as a kid going down there, and they'd all stand along the wall, just by the surf club. And they'd all be standing there smoking and talking and looking out and, you know, talking about the races or whatever they talked about. And that was neat.
Oh, there'd be my Uncle Tony, Ruffy Greco, and a few of the other guys. They'd be all looking out at sea. But as soon as anybody thought there was a bit of a break in the weather, he'd be off, and then we'd be all off. There's one for all and all for one, like the Musketeers. Yeah, and that's the way it's been for generations. Nothing's changed, except the vehicles have got later model, and we have to pick our bait up from our factories, not down the bait shed like we used to.
First thing in the morning, they'd put a case of barracuda on your shoulder to bring down the beach from the freezer to the dinghy. That was 100 pounds in those cases. first thing you had was a smelly barracuda, juice running down the back of the yard.
I look back on all the older guys now, and yeah, I can see I've got a little bit more cushy.
It's a picnic today, what we do today compared to then. When I started off on this boat, and at one place we were coming in the gale northwest, we lost the back hatch. So that pump there, that hand pump, I was 5 hours pumping water.
But now we've got an electric pump and and one that runs off the engine.
That was in 1955 when I first started fishing. I loved my fishing. I wasn't a very good boy at school, so I left early. But I used to have nightmares that I'd have to go back to school, you know, wake up during the night that I was going to school next day, not fishing. I hated to go to school.
I remember as a boy down at the bay, and you'd see the guys loading their 44-gallon drums or the half drums into their dinghies, and that was just normal for them. They thought nothing of it.
Every Saturday morning I used to lift 6 44-gallon drums into the dinghy, rolling a rope round the mast, round the drum, out of a big dinghies we had. We used to roll them above ropes. For a 14-year-old kid to do that was bloody hard work.
And now we just go into town and fuel up.
Yeah, well, we don't do any lifting like they did in those days, or when I started off.
Fishing, certainly in the early days, didn't appeal to everybody because it was a hard life, and there wasn't the market for it. In that film where you see them shaking crayfish out of the net, they hadn't gone out looking for crayfish. They've probably gone out to catch butterfish or warrihow, and the crayfish have crawled into the net. You could catch 100 groper, but when you brought them in, if the market had been saturated, they'd say, oh, we'll take 20 of those, and the rest would either be dumped or taken to an orphanage or a hospital or something like that and just given away. They could still put a smile on their face, I guess. But it was back-breaking work. You imagine some of the cuts and that they would have had on their hands, and they'd just have to go out the next day just like they did the day before. But in many respects, some aspects of the day-to-day operation are exactly the same as they were in 1920.
Nothing's changed really, apart from the technology on the boat. We set this up in 1992. It's a venture between my brothers and my father. We're probably one of the most traditional companies that we still fish the smaller boats, and we fish in the same methods that would go back 100 years. And we each have a role to play. My role's in the fishing and the quota management, and my brothers are in the marketing and the selling of the fish.
Excuse me, Steve Blue, hello.
This is my brother John. He does all the he does the wholesaling, the retailing, and the exporting. Cutting butterfish for the local market in Los Angeles.
You go through all the fish species in New Zealand that have been fished traditionally with small boats, and yet they're the ones that have sustained, right? And it's actually the big deep water fisheries that are stuffed. Orange Ruffy completely stuffed, you know. Hoki, TAC's been cut to absolutely nothing. Oreo Dories don't exist. Squid, well, it's a little bit different with squid because squid only lasts for 1.5 years and they go off and die. But you look at all the inshore species, terraki, groper, stuff like that. Those boats that fish it with small methods and they farm it, you know.
Some fish, you know, there's not the quantity it used to be. There's not the quantity it used to be years ago when I first started, that's for sure. But there's still a good quantity of fish out there. But leave it to the smaller boats and you never cook straight up. Bad weather sees to that. You know, they get out, they push the weather a bit, but some days it's blue and gale. But You get these 40-metre ones, it's not stopping them. Well, that's why the quotas come about, because they catch it the quickest they can to make a profit.
And the other thing is, if you look out there, there's a trawler still trawling, and all the smaller boats are at home. That's what saved Cook Strait, and yeah, I think that's why it's been so successful. We've kept our boats to the smaller range, you know, up to 60 odd foot, and in doing so, I've sort of maintained the fishery and yeah, kept it successful.
It's a good haul.
It's not bad. It's not bad at all anyway.
New Zealand's inshore fishery is now divided up into several areas. Each area has a total allowable catch for each species, an amount which MAF thinks will conserve the stock and allow sustained harvesting. That catch is divided up between all the fishermen in the area into individual transferable quotas. An ITQ is, in effect, a property right of ownership over a certain tonnage of fish in a given area.
No man should own fish. Everybody should own the fish. They're just a pack of crooks. This is us sardine fishing, 1965, and I ended up with no quota. All depends who they wanted to give them to. You know, they don't tell me after 55 years.
You got no history.
I've got no history.
You know, you had fishermen who, in Island Bay, for instance, who were, making good livings, working very hard, but then suddenly the legislation changed, and based on your fishing history, you were given a certain amount of quota. And some of this quota might have been worth a few $1,000s, but some was worth, $1 million or more.
We've still got our original quota, and then we've bought more as we've sort of gone along. Yeah, and basically we've bought off smaller guys that just couldn't sort of keep up, or couldn't keep up, or couldn't make it viable, It's pretty sad, but it's just the way it's gone, and on a larger scale, that's where it's going.
The big boys buy it all up, right? Once they buy it all up, they can't catch it on that small basis efficiently. So then it gets put onto the big boats who just have to go out for 10 days at a time or something to get a big enough catch to make it viable.
It's a ploy that the government wants. I mean, it's easier to control a number of companies than it is to control thousands of individual fishermen.
Even if you've got all the licences that you need, you can't just come in and take the fish and go and sell it to a shop, And even if you've got all the quota and you've got all the correct licences, now on top of that, from November last year, there's this Animal Products Act, which means that every primary product has to go through a company that's got a risk management program, So it's actually really, really extreme, and the costs involved actually quite amount up. So you've actually got to put a bit of fish through to make it viable.
Like they used to in the old days, buy a boat and go fishing. Now the quota comes first. If you haven't got the quota, you can't go. So good quota package is going to cost you $1 million. And that's before you buy a boat, your gear, and start fishing. So how many young guys can sort of fork out for 3 tonne of crays and sort of go fishing?
Any crays today?
That's where the industry will falter because there's not that new blood coming through.
Most of the offspring of these fishermen have become professionals, and they've wanted their kids to learn something that'll earn them some good money, and they won't have to break their backs doing it.
Growing up in Island Bay, everything revolved around the bay itself. We used to go rowing out to the island, fishing off the boats at night. We can't do that anymore because they've made it a marine reserve. What they wanted to do was basically run it from a certain point out this way to the quarry gates. What we've ended up with is a slightly smaller size reserve, but basically we're still knocked out of our fishery because the main Wario fishery is just outside Island Bay.
It's only small. We've got the biggest marine reserve at Cook Strait, where the cable joins the South Island and North Island. You've got over 120 square miles. And that covers all the fish that come through Cook Strait. And then Cook Strait There's always a reserve because it's always bad weather. You might get 10 flat days in a year and Cook Strait.
I'm not against the reserve, I'm against where they're proposing to put it. It's in the heart of a boating area. It's probably the only safe stretch of South Coast for recreational boaties to use. And also there's all those traditional fishing grounds that are there.
What they want to do is basically get rid of us, I think. There's an application for a matairo to go further up. Whether or not Doc's in cahoots there with Mary, I don't know, but one thing is we won't be lying down over this one. They'll take away my fishing grounds over my dead body. That's why we're promoting it a bit more, you know, we're having the blessing of the boats and sort of trying to get the public behind us, you know, because once you lose that, you lose your tradition, and that's a sad thing to happen.
Lord God, as we gather today, we ask you, by whose word all things are made holy, to pour down your blessing on these boats which you have created.
Well, the Italians always used to have this blessing in Italy. Then it went to America. Then wherever the Italians were, the fishermen. But it is traditional in Italy to do the blessing of the boats, yeah. Young Tony, my oldest son, old Solly, and my grandson. Well, we've been doing it, the last 4 years now?
Yeah, but it sort of was revived from something that used to happen in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
It was big then.
Extra water for you guys.
Oh yeah, well, it was a ritual for years and years, and then it sort of fell by the wayside because the numbers of boats dwindled in Island Bay.
It looked terrible to go past there and just see 1 or 2 boats sitting on the moorings.
No, it's good to see a lot more boats back in the bay. I think it's basically getting back to basics and protecting what you've got. It's always been a successful fishery here, and the last season for crayfishing proved it. We had one of our best seasons on record.
Not many people pick them up without a glove on.
You can't fish way to the south. There's just too much tide. All the ferries run all your gear over. And they get to breed and live and grow. We just take the ones that want to move in. In 100 years, we still do the same things. But it's just that the export markets are a little farther afield. But the core business hasn't changed in generations, you know. The fish we catch is still the same species, and that's a testament to the way we fish.
But also a lot of fishermen now are actually self-imposing limits on themselves to ensure that they've got a future. You know, I think most guys that are in it are in for the long haul.
I think we've got to hang on to what we got now because there's too many people trying to take it away from us.
You know, you can't just be a normal person that gets fish from A to B, you know? I mean, you've got a quota management system, you've got quality management system, you've got the legal side, the aspect of fishing, you've got everything, and it's so complex.
You've got to have a few hats, put it that way, you know? Not only just your fisherman's hat, you got your accountant's hat, and you got your lawyer's hat. But to be successful, you've got to be a mix of the whole lot.
The difficulty that owner-operators have now is that big companies are trying to grab as much quota as they can.
I sold my quota sales target, there's no one to keep it. Every month you got the bill to pay. Sometimes they overcharge you, sometimes it was shocking. I decided, you sell mine, I sell everything.
Some lease quota, but then they're not getting the returns, but they're still having to work very hard for it.
But if you want to operate successfully, you need to own your own quota. You got a message?
Fuel costs, etc., make it more difficult. But also for young people coming through, they need a lot of money to get into the industry. You've got to buy the quota. which is very expensive. You've got to buy a boat, which is expensive as well.
We're aware if we don't use it, we'll lose it. You know, that's a sad thing to happen.
You know, I mean, the Island Bay fishing community have always been the dominant fishing community in Wellington. These guys were the pioneers. You know, they're as much a pioneer as the guy that was fishing back in 1920, because everything evolves and you find new grounds, and you know, the work doesn't change that much.
Oh, peace and quiet. Tony Mulo doing the homework. If you don't fill this out, you get in the cart. Finished with that book. Now for my next book.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that there will be owner-operators in the future, but it doesn't look good.
I only one more book to fill out when I get to the truck.
It's actually quite sad because the quality of the fish is deteriorating because of the legal boundaries behind it.
Good weather for the Eskimos. Hey, don't take a photo of the Ngāi bins. No. We'll get it in the cart.
And there's two things I'd rather do now. That's fishing and have a game of bowls.
We stick to our traditions, and that's what's made this company viable and our family success. It's just by sticking together and keeping it basic, basically.
Me nono, my grandfather, was a fisherman. Papa is a fisherman. But for me, there is no future in fishing. The Quota Management System is having a negative impact on once thriving fishing communities, and the sustainability of the industry has suffered as a result. Family-run businesses are dying, and with it, our culture.
Oh, I better get these crays off to deep blue, put them in their little spa pools.
Just use that for pleasure fishing, take the plants on here.
Whilst there was the two communities there, they really didn't mix much.
It's not just job.
Because the quality of the fish is deteriorating because of the legal boundaries behind it.